Hello everyone, my name is Sue Alberti. This is Uncommon.
This podcast is brought to you by Neuralle Media. Are you an entrepreneur or marketer who needs help making podcasts, video or animation? Perhaps you don't have time to manage a freelancer or the budget to deal with an agency. Well, Neuralle Media can help you with simple and affordable content creation, saving you time and money by taking away the pain of producing that content. To learn more, head to neuralle.com/media. That's neuralle.com/media. Play around with our pricing or request a callback directly. Listeners to the show receive a special discount by using the promo code UNCOMMON. Welcome to another episode of Uncommon. My name's Jordan Michaelides and I'm your host. In this episode, I have for you Susan Alberti AC. Sue is the former Managing Director of Dancer Group, Chairman of the Susan Alberti Research Foundation, former Vice President of the Western Bulldogs, former National President of the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, and Companion of the Order of Australia, amongst an array of titles that she's held throughout her life. The football lady has certainly had a long and storied life, rolling with the punches as they launch directly at her. She has 3 primary goals in life, and one of those is creating a women's football league, finding a cure for diabetes, and having her beloved Western Bulldogs win a premiership. And so far, she has 2 out of 3, and I would not be betting against her on the 3rd. In the episode, of course, we covered a lot, including factors for football club success, proudest football moment, civic mindedness and her father, early years of Dancer Group, building stoicism and fairness, type 1 diabetes and her daughter, AFLW and the term footy lady, and how she wants to be remembered as well. If you like the episode, leave a rating on your favourite podcast app, or if you want a shout out for next week, leave a written review on Apple Podcasts. Share with your friends, take a screenshot and post on your Instagram story, tagging us at uncommon_show. If you want to watch the video for the episode, search Uncommon Show on YouTube and don't forget to like and subscribe. Show notes for all episodes can be found at neuralle.com/podcasts. With that being said, thanks for listening and I hope you guys enjoy this conversation with Sue Alberti. Sue, we are live. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be here.
Thanks for coming in. You're nice and early. I expected you to be nice and early and prompt.
Well,
I've heard that.
I don't like people waiting for me, so that's why I'm here. Yes.
Now, how did you feel about the doggy season this year?
It was a bit disappointing, but it was certainly better than 2018.
Yeah.
We've still got a lot of young players. I mean, that's a story that a lot of people put out, these young players, but we're a developing team. And if you saw what we did towards the end of the season, winning all those games, I was feeling pretty optimistic. I was hoping that maybe we could have cracked it and got into the finals, but we'll be there next year.
Yeah, I am always, as a St Kilda supporter, very jealous of the fact that you got Beveridge. He's a favourite son at St Kilda, and his father is a genius when it comes to selecting talent.
Yes.
And he's an exceptional coach. I'm sure you've spoken to him many times. So yeah, there's one thing about football and the Bulldogs. So I've got a few uncles that barrack for the Bulldogs, and seeing them win the final, not just you won the grand final in 2016, then you won the women's grand final in 18.
Yes. And in 16, I was the president of Footscray, my first year as president.
That's right, the VFL
We won the
team.
grand final.
Yeah.
I only had to wait that year. Peter Gordon had to wait a lot longer than me.
So it gives me a sense that, yes, maybe at some point in future there will be that opportunity for St Kilda to get there. But it had me thinking about, like, what do you think is the defining factor that makes a club successful in your experience? Is it personnel? Is it funding? Is it something else entirely that people often miss in a club?
Well, about 20 years ago, we developed a business model where we could see that the club was going nowhere fast and we were in big trouble, and we developed that business plan. And I think the whole club working together as one, we're a very cohesive club from the football department to all departments within the club, and we're all in this together. It was a united team. It was no exceptions, and that's what was my experience. Was the business model 20 years ago? We could see we were going nowhere. If we're going to stay in the league, developing that, implementing that, and then of course working with all the various departments and a good board, a strong board, where there's no leaks. It's all very confidential, and that's how it was with me.
Do you find that with those business plans per se, is it the fact that it exists and it's clearly defined that people can, I guess, jump on board to this thing that we're on?
They could see, yes. We were able to explain to them what we were doing. They all embraced the whole thing and see what happened.
Yeah. It's interesting because the talk about St Kilda from a lot of supporters is that whole 5-year plan thing, because you can set out these plans and then if you miss it, the media loves to sort of be like, oh, hey, by the way, you've got this thing here.
It's very important to get your finances in order. The rest will flow on. I mean, it's very, very important. I mean, we're a very poor club.
Yeah.
Very poor in the western suburbs of Melbourne. Who would have thought, that we'd do what we've done? But we had to get our finances right, our sponsorship right, and the culture had to be right at the club. And the culture was spot on.
What do you think fixes finances more? Is it members, sponsors, success, or something else in particular?
Well, success didn't give us sponsorship. I mean, we didn't have a lot of success, did we? But I think it was the belief in what we could do. And again, all working together in harmony, and which is what we did when I was on the board. It was a great place to be. We knew we were heading somewhere.
Yeah.
And I didn't think we'd get it as quickly as we did, although I was hoping. And of course, that was wonderful. And of course, I retired the year we won the grand final. You always step down when you're at the top, never when you're being asked to step down.
Yeah, it's always best to step down at your greatest moment.
Absolutely.
I've got a question deep in there somewhere, and we'll get into the AFLW and the Bulldogs further. But what do you think was your proudest moment? Was it the advent of the AFLW, the Bulldogs winning the premiership, or the women's team winning their premiership? What stands out to you as the most personally happy moment in that football space?
Well, of course, winning the premiership was incredible after 62 years, and that's a dream that I always wanted to see come true. But for me personally, seeing women given the same opportunities as their male counterparts, because that was something I've been hoping for probably over 50 years. And behind the scenes, I've been doing a lot to try and make that happen. And to see the women run out onto the ground in the first year at the premiership, when I took out the premiership cup, that to me was a defining moment in my life.
Yeah.
And it's something I'll never forget because I knew I played a part in history.
Yeah, and a very big part. You can sort of see how, for you personally, that there's a very strong connection between I've seen some photos of you standing there in the huddle at the St Kilda Sharks with the girls, so I could sort of see that, whereas in AFL there's a lot more moving pieces, and it's been around for, as you say, 62 years was it, without a grand final?
Well, that was for the boys.
Yeah.
The girls, do you aware...
Delivered quickly.
But are you aware of how long women's football has been around?
In Victoria, no. I mean, I know from personal experience playing with a lot of women up to the age of 15 that many have played.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of history.
Yeah. Well, you played.
I played. Yeah, that was a long time ago. I had to retire at 15, but it goes back to about 1913, and in fact even further back. But it's in the history books. There's a book out called Play On by Rob Hess, a professor from Victoria University.
Okay.
It started in 1913 when the men went to war. This is in Perth, Western Australia.
Really?
And the women slotted into the men's positions. So football has been around for women a long time. I always say to the men, you've had about 150 years on us. Give us a break. 100 years is always, the first 100 years is always the hardest. So women have been playing football since 1913 officially.
Yeah.
It went back even further, but officially.
Yeah.
So it's not something that was created in the last 20, 30 years.
No. That's for sure. Look, I agree with you on that. I'm sure it's been around for a very long... I mean, the fact of... I'm pretty sure this is something my grandmother used to talk about quite a lot. She didn't play, but is a similar thing. She's like, the women used to play. It's like, yeah. That's interesting about in Perth. So did they play was that the state level back then?
Yeah, it was between two shops. I forget the name of the store, but as again, it's in that history book. But it was between two stores, and the women played with the men, and of course that's what wasn't going to last for a long time because of the male physique as opposed
coming
to the
back, coming back from war and saying, "Hey, it's our thing."
But it was great. The women loved it. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine they were playing in these long pants and hats and, oh, my God. Honestly, I don't know how they played football, but they did.
It's always good to hear those little, tidbits of history. Like to think that this game was only created really round the corner because people got bored during the off-season of cricket. Mm-hmm. I think the first official game was played between two schools. Wasn't it? I think it was like Melbourne and Scotch College.
Exactly, and I'm still involved with Scotch College. I'm their patron for the women's team.
Really?
Yeah.
I heard somewhere that you've been quite involved recently at Siena.
Yes.
Because you attended Siena, yeah.
Yes.
What have you been doing there?
Well, when I attended Siena, there were 129 students, and we had 2 houses, and that was it.
Okay.
And of course, it's all changed.
What were the houses back then?
Oh, just ordinary houses, 3-bedroom homes, and that's where. So we were. When I say houses, just 3-bedroom houses.
Right. So it was
dwellings.
It was a boarding school back then.
No, not at all. And 129 students, and of course, it grew and grew and grew. And the nuns that taught me had a profound effect on me as to doing the things that I do right up until this day about giving back, being kind, caring, all of the above. And they're quite landlocked there. I remember when they started doing the development after I left and going going up, they contacted me a number of years ago and said, the records were not very good. Everything was in writing, and I mean, it's been a long time since I've been at that school, a long, long time. And they came to see me, and I said, well, I'll see what I can do to help you. I'll go out there and see what I can do. And we were not talking fundraising at that point in time. They're trying to build up an alumni, and I said, right, I know some of the girls that went to school with me, and gave them their names and addresses, email addresses, which didn't exist when I went to school. And it all evolved from there. And then, of course, I became involved with the redevelopment and helped raise a lot of money. I gave a lot of money of my own because I felt it was important to do it and to show leadership. Yeah. And, of course, now the school hall now is named after me.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's the Susan Alberti Auditorium. So I never get lost when I go there now. I just look for my name.
I'm home.
Yeah.
But where did you, because I noticed you were born in Gippsland. You seem to have a very, albeit you're a decade and a half younger than my grandmother. Mm-hmm. You sort of born in a similar area, went to a similar sort of school. She went to Sacré-Cœur.
Oh, my daughter went there.
Oh, did she?
Here in Glen Iris.
Yeah.
Oh, we couldn't afford that.
Really?
My parents couldn't afford Sacré-Cœur.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
So the Sacré-Cœur back then, geez, I mean, maybe
it's a boarding school.
Yeah, it was a boarding school because there's absolutely, well, I don't know. It's hard to tell because my great-grandfather was a printer he printed the local Gippsland newspapers, particularly for Foster and that surrounding region as well. I would not guess that they're the wealthy type. So either she had a scholarship or...
That's how it was.
It must have been a more achievable school to attend back then. But yeah.
Well, my parents didn't have the money. It just wasn't even thought about. I was born in Bairnsdale at the Bairnsdale Hospital, and my father had just come out of the war.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Where did he serve?
Oh, Dad was a drill sergeant. He trained the soldiers to go overseas.
Really?
He was a very fit man, my father, and no, he didn't actually go overseas, but he trained the soldiers. And he came out of the war after all that time and joined the police force. Okay. And the year that he joined the police force was the year I was born. And Dad was then transferred to Melbourne, to Russell Street. I think it was Russell Street. And that's where his career started off in the police force. But I was born in Bairnsdale. Okay. Didn't have a lot of time there, but I still go back there because I've still got relatives from Bairnsdale that still live there and still have businesses there. So I'm a country girl at heart, really I am. Yeah.
Where did you grow up? What sort of were the suburbs? Was it Footscray?
Never, ever lived in the west of Melbourne. Okay. Never, ever.
So how did the Footscray thing come about?
I know, I often get asked that. My father was stationed over that side of town at that time, and the only way I was allowed to go to the football, he's gone to God now, so it doesn't matter, was if he dropped me off and picked me up in a police car.
In a police car as well?
I know. The kids were scared of me. So that's why I barracked for Footscray. And plus, he barracked for North Melbourne, and I didn't like blue and white. And being the rebel that I am, I never did as I was told. I'm only joking. I like red, white and blue.
Yeah.
Australian colours, American colours, French colours, So I thought, I like red, white and blue better. And there's 3 colours. Why have 2 when you can have 3?
Yeah.
So that's really why I barracked for Footscray.
I read that and it said you decided you and your sibling,
My brother.
your brother, were going to become Western Bulldogs supporters. And I was like, surely not. Surely there's some other story there, but it sounds like it.
Richard was 7 and I was 6. And we made a pact in blood, as we did at the time, that we're going to barrack for Footscray for the rest of our lives, no matter what.
Yeah.
We lost more games than we won, but
I know, particularly during that era.
Yeah.
You said before about how you felt that at Siena that sort of civic mindedness came about, but I've got to wonder. I mean, your dad was a police officer. He sort of he worked for a few charities as well.
Dad was a member of St Vincent de Paul.
Volunteered,
for about 55 years. My dad was a good man.
Yeah.
He was just incredible. He was a kind and good and loving man, and he instilled in me those values, and my brother too. But more so me, I think. I picked up more of that than my brother did, although my brother's a very good man. But Dad instilled in those values in me, and of course the nuns contributed as well.
Of course.
They were strict, they were tough, they were hard, they were wonderful women. I love them.
Did they let anyone write left-handed? Because that's one thing that my grandmother used to say.
Honestly, I don't think I ever experienced that. I know they used to force you to use your right hand.
Yeah, they felt it was like, I can't remember what she said.
It's terrible.
Yeah,
because
she was left-handed.
I've got a niece in my family who's left-handed, and her daughter's now left-handed and doesn't make, and my granddaughter's left-handed.
Yeah.
So
apparently, like at Sacre-Cœur, they used to. Eventually, they stopped doing it, but they used to tie your hand behind your back.
I've heard that too.
And she used to debate. How she used to love getting in trouble, seeing how much she could test them.
I did a bit of that too.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun though, particularly doing it with nuns and priests and whatnot.
It was even more fun when you played them on the basketball court, because there was one way of getting back at them if they'd been giving you a hard time, especially if you were a better basketballer than they were, and I was.
Do you find that there's a particular lesson that you hold with you today from either your father or mother in particular, and you might have seen it or they might have said it to you directly in particular?
Oh, it was reinforced all the time from Dad. There were people worse off than me.
Yeah.
That, it was important to be kind and caring. It was right throughout my whole life. I used to often wonder how I could be more caring and give more of myself. I had nothing much to give.
Yeah.
Well, I had nothing to give, actually. I certainly didn't have any money. And I thought, well, how can I give back? And I would walk my bus fare. And I was catching buses at 6. We didn't have a car.
No.
So if you got somewhere, you had to walk somewhere. So I put my money in the mission boxes, which would make a difference. And that money would be used for overseas missions.
Did he have regular stories that he would utilise to showcase sort of that people were better off? Because I always find
Dad saw some terrible sights in the police force.
Really?
I really do think it impacts on them. And I've heard some stories, but then I've got big ears too. I used to listen. I heard my father talking to my mother, and Dad experienced some horrible things. But it didn't change his attitude to still being caring and good and kind.
Yeah.
It came from his parents too.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did they do?
His mother was a concert pianist. She was a singing teacher, because my father was a trained singer, a classical singer. And his dad, he was in sales and marketing. They lived in Bondi, New South Wales.
Oh, did they?
They were very good people. They had 4 children, 4 boys, all brought up with the same sort of, being caring and giving back, and just a good family. I think they instilled those values in my father.
Okay.
And of course, he instilled them in me, although I think they were more well off, Dad's family, than what we were, but that didn't make any difference to who I was.
Wow. I wonder how did they make it down to Victoria?
They didn't. Dad was, they lived in Bondi, New South Wales, Dad's parents. Dad in the army. He was then brought back to Melbourne after he'd been training in the army, came back to Melbourne. He met my mother, who was from Hamilton and Victoria. So that's how Dad settled in Victoria, in Melbourne.
Right.
But always went back to his parents 2 or 3 times a year to visit.
Wow. It's funny you mention his parents were concert pianists or singers. It's the same thing with so although my great-grandfather was a printer by day, at night his wife was a concert pianist, and he would play I've actually got a little, you can probably see the photo on my desk there of him. She always used to say that she actually passed away earlier this year, so she left that for me. She always used to say that I looked very similar to him, and he played the violin, piano,
Oh, that's
and all
beautiful.
that. Yeah, she was a very nice lady. But yeah, it's funny those similarities in families from that area.
Well, our entertainment was around the piano. Mum,
Yeah.
that was the only expensive thing we had. I think Mum paid that off. I play piano. I studied at school. My brother plays the guitar, and our entertainment was around the piano. Dad would sing, Mum would play, and my brother would play the guitar, and that was our entertainment. And I have a love of music that people don't know about.
Okay.
I've loved it all my life. Get me to any concert and I'll be there, whether it be classical, musical, whatever.
Anything. Yeah.
And when I'm ever in New York, I'm out every single night,
Okay.
going and seeing something or listening to something.
You know, you mentioned about your dad and how he met your mother and stayed here in Melbourne. How did you meet Angelo?
At a dance. I used to love dancing, ballroom dancing, as you did in those times, back in the 60s. You did ballroom dancing. You go to various town halls, whether it be Heidelberg, Hawthorne, Moorabbin.
Yeah.
There was a place in Parane you could go to. And I met him dancing. And, of course, one of the first things he did when he came to Australia was to learn to dance.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Italians know how to dance. They
Yeah.
are so good at dancing. Well, that era. Not so much about now, I don't know. And I could see him dancing, and he looked fantastic dancer. And I thought, oh, God, I hope he asked me to dance, because I love dancing myself. And, of course, I did eventually dance with him. But the thing what I couldn't work out was he never spoke. And I thought, oh, I've done something wrong. He didn't speak English.
Right. Not a lick.
Oh, yes and no, maybe.
Yeah.
Hello. And I think he let his feet do the talking that night. And he was the most incredible dancer.
Yeah.
And I sort of danced with him most of the night. And then, of course, my father came to pick me up, this big, strong-looking man with a moustache and dark hair. I think he looked like he belonged to the mafia, in a police car.
Yeah.
To see that his daughter was okay. And I think Angelo got a big surprise when he saw my father was a policeman. And then he asked my father if he could take me out. I can't remember whether it was there or... Actually, it was to another dance. That's right.
What was your dad's first impression of Angelo?
He didn't mind because he didn't know he was Italian at that time. He thought he was German.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Because he was blonde, blue-eyed and very good looking.
Okay. Which part of Italy was he from?
From Udine, northern Italy.
Okay. Yeah.
Came from near the Dolomites.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful area.
A little bit different to south and north.
Very different.
My father looked like he came from southern Italy. He's tall, 6'2", strong, fit, healthy, and
loves a good solid
Oh
handshake.
yeah, absolutely. And Dad said that's okay. Come over and we'll meet you. And of course, Angelo didn't speak hardly a word of English.
Yeah.
How do you think how intimidating that was?
I know.
But at the same time, he was trying to learn English. He was reading the newspapers and started then going to night school. And
Okay. Well, because I'm interested because my grandmother met a Greek gentleman as well at a dance. He was lucky though because he spoke very good English because he came from Cyprus and Cyprus was it was actually a protectorate of England back then. So he went to an English school.
It helps.
It helps a lot. And when he was actually looking up where to go to, he was looking at major cities in the world that didn't have a Greek newspaper with a large Greek population. He's like, Melbourne, large Greek population, no paper whatsoever. Okay, I'm going to come here. And it was either here or Buenos Aires was another area.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, see, Angelo nearly went to South America.
Yeah, a lot of them.
He wanted to shoot kangaroos, though.
Did he? That was the reason why he came.
Oh, that's the story he told me. No, he came here because he knew it was a good place.
What did he do for work? Like, did he have a job before, because you guys entered the construction space. Did he do that before coming to Australia?
Angelo went to a technical school in Italy where they taught you all trades for 4 years.
Okay.
And he was qualified in various trades, not just bricklaying, carpentry, everything. It's very different in Italy as it is here in Australia. And he had a decision to make whether he went to South America or to Australia. He decided to go to Australia. And he was working in France just before he came to Australia, sleeping in a bus. That's the only all he could afford. And he could see that there was no future for him in Italy, although he loved the country, but no future for him personally. So when he came over here, he already had skill skills. He was a very, very good tradesman.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how the two of you met, obviously. How long before, like after that first dance, till you guys got married?
Oh boy, I didn't tell my parents he was Italian for 6 months because my father didn't like Italians because he'd had them as prisoners of war and he thought they were weak and blah, all sorts of stories. And he had this preconceived idea that Italians were not strong. Well, did he change? I didn't have to change him. He could see it for himself.
Yeah.
He admitted he was wrong and he was sorry about it. And I couldn't tell Dad even his name because it gave it away, because his name is really Angelino, not Angelo. Yeah, Little Angel.
But even Angelo.
Angelo, well, it could be Greek too. And there were lots of Greeks at the time coming out, Greeks and Italians. They were just coming to the country and finding their way and doing amazing stuff. But the thing that really my father loved most of all was his work ethic, and he was such a gentleman towards me. That sold my father.
Yeah.
He realised he made a huge mistake.
Yeah. And that is one common thing amongst that Mediterranean culture, is those two things are always, like, you can be guaranteed you find people who are hardworking and very, very respectful.
And very family-minded.
Very.
And the family is everything.
Do you know, now in the family that my grandmother and grandfather had, every single, including my grandparents, every single son and their wife ran their businesses together and had their own business.
That's what they did. Well, see, Angelo's brother came out eventually and they became partners.
Yeah.
And then the mother and then the sister. And because the sister she went to university. She had her own separate career. But the two brothers worked together for quite some time.
Yeah. It's one thing that I think my grandmother really loved. Like, she used to always comment that in a lot of Australian families, the man would go to work and the wife would stay at home. And then he'd come at home and start slogging beers as soon as this is a generalisation, obviously, but whereas my she was involved straight away. Like, she would have been invoicing, but she was actually doing sales. in the very, very early years, just because they had to.
Well, who else was going to do it if she didn't do it?
Exactly.
Someone had to do it.
And so someone would babysit the kids. Maybe the eldest son would babysit my dad. Little things like that you sort of learn to appreciate as you hear the stories later on at Christmas dinner tables and stuff. I love it. It's why I love stories, I think. I think it's that in particular. What have you learned? What did you learn from Angelo in particular?
His work ethic, because I had the same type of work ethic as he did.
Yeah.
And we had a vision. We both had a vision and a dream. Because
what was that dream?
We had nothing.
Yeah.
So we had nothing to start off with.
Okay.
And we were driven people. Mm-hmm. We both wanted to be successful, because I think it was innate in me. From a little kid, I think I was an entrepreneur. At about the age of 6, I was trying to make cakes. Mum said I was a disaster. But anyhow, trying to make cakes with her overseeing me all the time and to sell them and make some profit.
Okay.
And because I wanted to help my family. Even though I'm Australian, I've still got that European way of doing things.
Yeah.
But I was not involved with Europeans at the time. But I think, being an entrepreneur from about the age of 6, I was wheeling and dealing. And I knew if I worked hard, I could be successful. And see, Angelo had the same ideas
and
as
so
me.
When you met each other, it sort of just clicked.
Absolutely. We both had the same view on life.
Yeah. Mm. You guys originally started the business as Alberti Group. Which
Alberti. It was
Alberti Construction.
It used to be A&R Alberti originally. Okay. Then it became Alberti Constructions, and then it became Dansu. But Alberti was the two brothers, and I was working in a legal office. I was doing.
Oh, really?
I was working in a legal office, and I could see that Angelo was getting absolutely bogged down with work and paperwork, and it was just. It just couldn't go on the way it was, and all of a sudden I became involved because I was interested in what they were doing, and I was actually fascinated in the building industry. And the more and more involved I got with the building industry, the more I wanted to know about it, and I started reading plans, computations, building sites. It all came together. And Angelo and we had a 5-year plan at that time, as you could when you're in your 20s. I wouldn't say the same thing now at my stage of life, maybe 2 years, but we had a 5-year plan and we stuck to it. And
do you remember that first 5-year plan?
Yes, I do.
Still?
One of my house paid off by the time I was 30.
Okay.
Was paid off by the time I was 28. I was 28.
Wow.
That was a big plan of ours to have our house paid for.
Okay.
Because we knew we could use it as equity for other stuff that we wanted to do. So I was quite young, and Angelo was young too. So wanted to have 4 kids. That didn't happen. That was in the 5-year plan. That was one box I couldn't tick. But we had big plans.
Do you, like when you guys first started, what were those early years like? Was it originally a construction business that morphed into, obviously you did much larger constructions later on, but did you guys become like owners of property as part of that process as opposed to just constructors?
It's a really interesting story why it all started in the building industry, like as in constructing rather than Angelo doing the manual hard work. We were married in the early 60s, and Angelo had a very nasty accident. He was boxing up some concrete. A stick went through his eye, and as a consequence of that, he had to have his eye removed, in and out of hospital. That's probably another reason why I became so involved, is because I had to take over things. And then he had his kidney removed because of the medication he was taking for the eye. Again, he was in and out of hospital, so then he was minus 1 kidney. So and Angelo was an absolute perfectionist with everything he did. If something was wrong, he'd smash it down. That would it. Start again. That's how he was about everything he did. He was very, very clever in more ways than one, financially, in the construction industry. So he decided we needed to do something different. So he decided to buy some land, some industrial land in Braeside, which was absolutely nothing there. But just before then, he and his brother had just arrived. They decided to build 16 flats. That's where he had the accident, actually. He was doing his own labouring. And we bought some land and he decided to build a spec building. I had a tenant almost immediately for that spec building that he had. And then he bought more and more and more land. But at such a frenetic pace, I couldn't keep up with the finances because he'd have something built and I didn't even have the money. It was like being on a merry-go-round. We're just getting bigger and bigger and better and better. We never advertised. It was all by word of mouth. This Italian handshake, that's all it meant to Angelo. You shook your hand, the deal's done. Angelo was a man of his word when it came to business. Wow. I certainly learnt the Italian way along the way. That's how it's done. You give your word, there's no going backwards. And his brother was the same too. Yeah. And of course we got bigger and bigger. But then after about 20 years, Roger had other ideas, his brother. He was doing other things, and I think Angelo found it difficult to work with him much longer. And of course family is so important, as I said before, about the Italian way. And they went their separate ways. I'm thinking about 83, 85. We decided to get bigger. We had also, at the time when Roger was still there, just before they separated, we had a plastics business. In fact, we had 400 staff. We had 300 in the building industry, and we had 3 other businesses and another 100 staff. Jeez. So imagine the workload that I had 7 days a week, and I was never trained for this. So I had to absolutely had to learn very, very quickly as to how things are done. So we had all that too. We had a swimming pool business. We had a piggery, a farm. I used to work there on a Sunday.
Really?
I didn't know what it was like to have a holiday. All I knew was to work and to work hard.
Yeah, well, that sounds like my life right now. And that's the thing when you have a business, there is no such thing as free time. Yeah.
If you want to be successful, you either got to do that or you don't.
Yeah.
You've got to get on with it, do it if you want to be successful. It will not come to you.
It's as simple as that. And I think I haven't even had a holiday in we're going on our first holiday in about 2 years.
I waited 15.
Yeah.
And then I went on a bus tour with my daughter, and then she got sick on me. So anyhow.
Where was that bus tour?
Oh, we went on a bus. We went to Los Angeles to Disneyland.
Okay.
Because she was such a good student, and I promised her I'd take her one day when I found the time, and that was nearly 15 years after we'd never had a holiday. Yeah. Even over Christmas, we never had a holiday. Yeah. We just kept working. That's how it was then.
It is. It's one of the things that my dad always mentions to me as well. Same with their business. My mum and him, they just, I got to think, when I was born, that was sort of the 91 recession, and owning a printing business was not a good thing to have. And they just, for years they had a mortgage, and then previous business they had gone bust with my uncle, and they been held up with some Telstra wanted every dollar on the contract for some stupid mobile phone, which he had to pay off for years.
Yeah.
I just think like where they were then to where they eventually got to is quite remarkable, and it's me seeing them do that hard work is the key thing.
Well, you've got the work ethic now, haven't you?
Yeah.
You've learnt it from them.
I can't. It's like it's a double-edged sword. I can't ever stop. That's the issue. I have to stop
hey, listen,
myself.
I still can't stop.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop dead on the job.
Yeah.
I love what I do.
I could never retire,
No.
but I have, I do get told that I have to slow down. So that's why we go down to see Lauren's parents in
You've got to
Martha Cove
find
once
some me time. You know, I do. I still find me time.
Yeah.
But when you love what you do and I don't have to do it, it's very different.
Yeah, the only thing that gets me is just tiredness
Yes.
or grumpiness because I've been sitting in front of a computer too long.
Yeah.
That is the one issue I've got with the work that I do is sometimes I just don't like being in front of a computer too long. It does something to you, you know? How do you I know you love to get into the garden. What's sort of your way? Is that your main way to decompress?
No, I like walking. When I was trying to, you probably know I had been quite sick and I'd been quite overweight.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking to the researchers at Walter and Eliza because I have a lot to do with them. And I said, how can I exercise? I'm too damn fat and I'm not going to go to the gym. I'm not a lycra girl. And they said, walk. And I started walking. And it started with 1 kilometre, 5 kilometres, 10 kilometres. And, of course, it's fantastic walking. And I like walking around looking at gardens. I get a real buzz out of checking out people's gardens. Not checking out their houses, just because I think it's always an afterthought with a lot of people, is the garden. To me, is so important, the garden. I just adore the garden. Like making things beautiful, like in the building side of things. The garden to me is just as important.
It's funny as well when you get a hobby and now that you get into it, you see my thing has been cinematography. So I'll be watching a movie and I'll be commenting on to Lauren like how they filmed it and all that sort of stuff. I can imagine you sort of walking around.
I do.
And just looking at people's gardens like, oh, that's interesting. I like how they did that.
I think they should be doing something, you know. I'm a critique walking around and looking at people's gardens, but then I also get ideas for my own garden. We've got about 3/4 of an acre and it's all English.
Okay.
We do have a few Australian natives, which are messy, but my choice is I do like Australian native English gardens.
Why is that? They're just neater?
Yeah, neater and more beautiful.
Okay.
The colours and the vibrancy and the tones, it's just beautiful.
Yeah, there's no greater thing than visiting the English countryside.
Absolutely.
Lauren's mum's from Yorkshire. So
oh, wow.
The Yorkshire Dales is stunning.
Yeah.
Back on Dancer Group, does it still exist today?
No, I've wound down the business 10 years after Angelo died. It stands for Danielle, Angelo and Susan.
That's right.
That's why we've got that name. And when Angelo and Roger went their separate ways, we changed the name to Dansu. And I still have that number plate on my car.
Do you really?
Because I promised my daughter I'd never, ever lose that name.
It's a great name.
Yeah.
And so you wound down the business 10 years afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's fairly well documented about what happened to Angelo with the accident, which is very unfortunate. You obviously had to take on board everything. It seems like for the next 10 to 15 years of your life.
I really was sharing the load, heavy load, even before he died. That's why I think I was able to continue the way I did because I was already knew a lot about the business.
Yeah.
And I'd already been very interested and enjoyed what I was doing, albeit it was quite a heavy workload and I was on my own. So it was quite difficult. I was on my own. And I was in the midst of a grief, shock and mourning, I guess you could say. It was very tough.
Yeah, how did you, that was one thing I was intrigued by, like how did you maintain that sort of North Star? How did you not just fold over and just be like, well, you know what, I give up?
It's easy to do that.
Yeah.
It's much harder to hang in there. And I had so many people looking to me for leadership, their livelihoods. And the Italian way is you look after your staff like family.
Yeah.
And I know Angelo would have done the same thing. So I felt I owed it to Angelo that I would ensure that these people were looked after, that when I eventually did wind down the business, which I really wasn't going to do, but we had to get off the merry-go-round sooner or later, that everybody went on to another job, and I was very happy about that.
Yeah. The winding down, what did that look like? Was that no longer taking on contracts or primarily just migrating towards holding and renting property as part of that process?
I was still doing some projects. I was a registered builder. I was still doing some projects, but it was more of a bit of winding down and retaining a portfolio. I mean, I'd done enough.
Yeah.
I had other things I wanted to do too. I was in aged care. I had 5 facilities as well. I was doing that as well.
Jesus.
I know. That's what people say to me too.
Aged care, that is... do you still own many properties in the aged care space at all?
No, I've sold off my share. My brother now manages that. Richard is still involved. I became involved when I could see when I visited facilities for my parents and they were ageing. I didn't like what I saw.
Yeah. It's not... that's one of those things, and I can tell you would be. I'm guessing you'd be the type that you never ever ever want to go to any of those sort of places, right?
Not some of the ones that I saw.
Yeah,
and the ones we had was by word of mouth. It was a home to these people. It was so important to me. It was not just a business.
Yeah,
but these people had to feel like they were in their own home and cared for and loved. And that's what I found when I was trying to find somewhere for mum and dad. I didn't see any of that. And anyhow, that's why I became involved.
Okay.
Said to my brother, we can do better than this.
Yeah, and that's how it came about. That's very interesting. Yeah, my grandmother was in an aged care. Unfortunately, she had dementia for
dreadful.
about 3 years, which is a terrible, terrible disease.
Well, I'm involved with a project down here in Victoria, a dementia village.
Really?
Yeah, I'm their sponsor and ambassador. And
that's fascinating.
Yeah. And
so is it just for people who have dementia?
In Heathcote, yes.
Okay.
A village. We're doing, I've fronted up with some money for a feasibility. We've got a long way down the track. I think we've got government on board. We've got a major bank on board.
Yeah.
That will be happening soon.
Well,
that was not to make money, by the way. That was because I could see a need for it. I went to speak at a function. A wonderful nurse mentioned to me about how difficult it was for people with dementia. I didn't like what I saw. I saw in the aged care facilities what happens to them. I thought, this is crazy. There's a Dutch initiative where they've got a dementia village in Holland, in Amsterdam, I think, and we're basing it on that, and it will be a wonderful thing once it's all up and running.
Yeah, it reminds me, we had a prior guest a few weeks ago whose mother had early onset Alzheimer's. I should reach out to her and see, because she's always wanted to help in this space. She's tried to reach out to Dementia Australia. She's got quite a large audience on social media, like a very, very big audience. And she's been amazing for getting that out there and talking about it. And she's wanted to get involved in some projects. So I wonder if I should mention it to her.
Absolutely. I know Dementia Australia. But the thing is, there are drugs now that are really stopping the progress of it. But I would hope very soon, because I do a lot of research, we will have, we'll be able to tell who's going to get dementia and have preventative measures in place
before it starts to
yes, that's prevention is far better than the cure.
I agree. It's a terrible thing. As I said, my grandmother, she had vascular dementia, which is one of those things where you have a stroke and it starts to affect you.
It's terrible.
An interesting point that I found in one of your interviews was about the fact that when Angelo was hit by that truck down at
rubbish removal truck,
the rubbish removal truck, and you actually hired a private investigator to go find the person, and they found them. The
police couldn't find him.
Okay.
And I said to my dad, who was alive at the time, I said, Dad, I owe it to Angelo. I've got to bring the perpetrator back to justice. I hired someone who did all his research. It was an ex-policeman, actually.
Really?
Yeah, and he found him in the Northern Territory.
How did he find?
Don't ask me. That's what he does for a living.
Wow.
Or did for a living. I think he'd be well and truly retired now.
Yeah.
But he brought him back, but I didn't get justice.
Really?
No.
They could never prove it?
Without going into too much detail, that's for another day. But he got fined and penalised, and he thought it was, I could be honest, a huge joke that he had his fare paid for to bring him down to court. He could visit his friends, and he never once said, I'm sorry.
Wow.
He just was not interested.
Yeah, what a complete difference to how that sort of thing is treated nowadays.
What really upset me more than anything, after the court case, you're not allowed to divulge that they've had prior convictions. He had a list as long as your arm.
Wow.
So he'd done it before,
yeah.
and he got away with it again.
And again.
So justice, don't talk to me about justice. Angelo was gone. He was dead. It affected the whole family, affected business, affected everything. But that man got off scot-free, and I hope he remembers it every night he puts his head on the pillow, what he did to a family because he was in a hurry.
Yeah, it's a very terrible thing. It's disappointing to hear that was the outcome,
Well,
to be honest.
if ever I wanted to drive over them, was that man, but it took all my courage not to smack
Not to
his
do
face in
anything.
the court. I was just so upset because I didn't get justice.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it happens to a lot of people. But I remained calm on the outside, but on the inside I was fuming.
Where do you think that stoicism came from? You know, like that, because that's a common theme amongst things that have happened in your life.
Oh,
do you think you're born with it?
I think I was born with it, but also I grew up in a very tough area, and my very best friend was raped and murdered, and I had to live through that. And I was in a neighbourhood where, you know, it was very dangerous. And I had to be tough. I had to be streetwise from a very early age. As I said, I was walking to the bus stop at 6. I knew how to look over my shoulder and go in a different direction every morning. My father instilled in me.
Yeah.
So from a very early age, I was pretty tough.
So if someone swung, you knew how to duck and swing back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't take it lying down. In fact, I defended my brother once.
Really?
A boy was picking on him, and I said, "You do that one more time, I'll fix you up." And I picked him up and threw him in the blackberry bushes because we didn't have houses there. It was just blackberry bushes. He never picked on my brother again.
Yeah.
But I didn't physically attack people, but he was being horrible to my brother.
Yeah. You had to stand up for yourself
Absolutely.
in that era.
I had
think.
to. I had to stand up for myself.
Yeah.
And it didn't mean shooting people. It just meant, you know, I may be smaller than you, but you're not going to get to me. I may be a woman, but I can stand up to you, you big bully.
Yeah.
And often in those years, all those years ago, they were not used to women standing up to them. They were used to getting their own way. Well, I tell you what, they weren't getting their own way with me, and I've been like that all my life.
Sounds very much like my grandmother, Evelyn.
Yeah. Except I'm Australian.
She had a very, very strong belief in that as well, that's for sure.
I believe in fairness.
Yeah.
That's what
I think that's what it is. I think it's not so much an assertiveness or anything like that. It's about valuing what's right.
Absolutely. Dad always taught me that, and always to tell the truth.
Yeah.
No matter, sometimes you can get yourself into a bit of hot water.
Yeah.
Dad always encouraged me to tell the truth.
I want to talk about type 1 diabetes. As I mentioned earlier, my brother's got type 1, which is... It's a very tough thing to deal with. As I was saying off air, I feel like my mum almost feels guilty about it. But I think I should say first of all, thank you, because we did the Walk for Cure so many times and got so many people involved. It's actually quite a fun day.
Do you know, when I tried to get that off the ground, I was knocked back.
Really? What did they say?
What if it rains? I said, well, stuff you. I'll do
Bring
it.
an umbrella.
You get. There's a formula to it. You don't have, if it rains, well, it rains. There's a formula to it that you still get your sponsorship.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll do it in Sydney and I'll do it in Melbourne if you don't want to do it. Okay. We did it in Sydney and Melbourne. And that was in 1994. Put plans in place in 92. 1994, we had our first walk. We raised nearly $400,000 net.
Wow.
So.
And then over that lifetime, it's easily 30 million plus.
Oh, it's more. It's 40.
It's way more than that.
40 million now.
Yeah.
But, I saw it happen in America. I brought back the whole idea from America. They had been doing it, and I could see it could happen in this country. And there weren't a lot of walks around at the time, not like there are now. Walks and rides and runs and...
And it's a beautiful walk in Melbourne, around the lake. It's
lovely.
Yeah.
I never forget the first walk. We didn't have any of the marquees or anything. In fact, my husband bought I think he bought a whole half a beef in and chopped it up for the barbecue with a chop, with a chop, with what do you call it? Axe, with an axe.
Yeah.
God. And that was how basic it was. And I remember he went down to the milk bar to get some bread and he came back with about 12 different loaves of bread. That was our barbecue.
Wow.
But I remember when the kids did the walk, a number of them had type 1. And they came back and they said to me, well, it was called Walk for the Cure. We've done the walk, now where's the cure? And I was sincere about that.
That is this is a real issue with this disease, is the mental aspect of it. I think it's actually the greatest issue because the same my mum mentioned to me when my brother was diagnosed when we were about 12. We were on a holiday in the Sunshine Coast. And I remember this really well because he kept drinking cordial.
And running to the toilet.
Yeah, but for him, his blood sugar was 48.
Oh, my God, he should have been in a coma.
Yeah, he was nearly... that he had to be rushed to hospital. They had no idea. They did the test and all that because he'd been drinking cordial and condensed milk.
Oh, my God.
But all we can do now is laugh in hindsight and think, wow, you've got some fortitude to deal with that because 48, that is exceptionally dangerous.
That is very, very high.
Yeah.
That's almost dead.
50 and you're dead,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yes. It is a psychosocial disease.
It is, isn't it? Because the constant, we forget about, you know, when you've got a bit of a hangry mood swing, it's normally because you've got low blood sugar, right? Or lower than normal blood sugar. There's been a disturbance of some type. But when you got type 1, it's constant.
24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Never, ever goes away.
Never goes away.
No.
And I guess that's why I can see where my mum's coming from. Maybe she feels a bit guilty about it. I think my brother's done incredibly well, even though I just think that he gets frustrated. And I've got a mate who's got it as well, and he gets very frustrated. But we're in an age now where there's a lot more things there to help them deal with it.
There's a lot of technology, pumps.
Exactly, like the pumps.
CGM.
My brother now eats predominantly sort of like not a keto diet, but a very high fat and protein diet. So he doesn't get as many spikes as he used to. So his mood's a lot better.
Yeah.
I'd be that it ever used to be, which is good. Where do you think we are with? Because I know you left the JDRF in 2013. Where do you think we are when it comes to research for a cure and all that?
I'll take you back a number of years. I was one of the founders of JDRF, or it was DYF, JDF, and then JDRF.
Okay.
So it's had an evolution. And I was one of the founders because when my daughter was diagnosed, there was absolutely nothing to support
what year was
parents.
she diagnosed?
81.
Okay.
There was nothing around to support families and children. There was another organisation that supported adults, but type 2 is very different. People have got to get that message.
Yes.
It's through type 1, no fault of your own. Type 2, you can usually sort that one out.
You can change it pretty quickly.
If you want to.
Yeah.
If you want to. But anyhow, I decided that something had to happen. We needed to set up some sort of support group. We did. And we offered education and support, but we didn't offer any research because there was nothing happening. There were 2 researchers in this country at the time. In fact, I didn't have Google. I didn't have internet. I had white pages, yellow pages. So I rang around Australia to find out who was doing what, to find 2 researchers. And I thought, how can we offer research? And I'm not the only person involved in JDRF. We could see an international organisation that was doing research called JDRF in America.
Okay.
We were not JDRF then. We were different. We were DYF, Diabetes Youth Foundation. But we decided in our wisdom that we would become an affiliate of the JDRF, who are based in New York.
Okay.
So that's where it all started, in JDRF. They were doing research, some research.
Right.
And we knew that our researchers, if we could encourage them to become interested in diabetes research and provide them a pathway, whether it be talk about it at university, so when they come out they'll be interested in diabetes research. Well, that's how it all happened, through becoming an affiliate of JDRF, which was based in America. They have affiliates all around the world now. I think they've got about 13. I used to chair that affiliate committee. I did it for about 3 years. All of a sudden we're able to get money into the country, even though what happened was our researchers had to apply internationally, judged by the international peers, and then they were funded in US dollars.
Really?
At that time it was pretty good because the dollar was,
the exchange
it
rate.
was pretty good.
Yeah.
So more and more interest then in diabetes research, more and more money coming into the country. And in my journey alone, since day dot, my journey, I've probably raised over $200 million plus. That's a conservative figure. So research became interesting in this country because of the pathways and the money. And of course the government liked it too, because money was coming into Australia, not leaving Australia, because at the time no money could ever leave the country. Any money we raised here stayed here, and then we topped it up with American money, which was coming in. That's how it all started with JDRF, or with DYF, JDF, JDRF, and then JDRF International, because now they're truly international. They give out millions and millions now around the world. It's frustrating in terms of a cure. I've been on this journey now for nearly 40 years. I have seen it's very slow, medical research. In fact, it's frustrating. If it's frustrating for me as a parent, well, imagine how it is for a person who's got the disease, living with it. And when your daughter comes to you and says, Mum, when will this damn thing be cured? Because at one time, JDRF were advocating that we'd have a cure by the year 2000, which was absolutely the wrong thing to do. Anyhow, they learnt their lesson. And whilst we've now improved in technology, pumps, insulin pumps, continuous glucose monitoring, because a lot of our children, unfortunately, will die in their sleep, go into a coma because their blood sugar goes so low, they don't know it's gone so low and they don't wake up. So I've headed up that organisation, another organisation, to get government to fund that, which they're doing now, which is fantastic. So technology's come a long way. In terms of medical research, I saw a scheme, some research that was as you know, in Canada, Banting and Best discovered insulin in 1922. That's in Canada.
Yeah.
When I was at an international conference, which I used to go at my own expense, I never had anyone pay for me. It was my choice. I discovered there was a program called the Islet cell transplantation program, which was being done in Canada. The Yanks hate being beaten by the Canadians. They found insulin. Now they had this other scheme, this insulin Islet transplantation program, taking islets from the cadaver and putting them back into the patient.
Uh-huh.
At that time, going back 15 years ago, they needed 2 or 3 transplants it's just like a blood transfusion.
Yeah.
And then the person became insulin independent.
Really?
Yes, it's quite exciting. And but they needed immunosuppressant drugs, which were very potent. Cyclosporin and those drugs.
It's like being told you've got leukemia or something.
Yeah.
And
like having a heart transplant, and you've got to have all these anti-rejection drugs to stop the body from rejecting something foreign. So anyhow, that was back in those days, and I could see there was potential in this country. But I knew I had to convince the government because it was a huge project. It was working well in Canada, and the Americans loved it because, this is fantastic, this is great news, and the Canadians and their government just love them, they're really advancing things. So I knew that it had potential, and I came back to Australia. I thought, who would listen to me? I had no sort of contacts at government. So I remember going and seeing the health minister, the federal health minister, and saying, if I put in X, will the government put in? I was going to put in a number of millions of dollars, and the government needed to put in 32. And the government agreed.
Okay.
I could not believe it. I also remember when I went to see Tony Abbott, who was the health minister at the time. Love him or hate him, that man got it.
Yeah.
He understood medical research. He understood science. He understood what it meant to be a healthy person. And he's one of the healthiest health ministers I've ever seen, the way he runs around and rides his bike. And he said to me, is that the disease that you inject yourself with sugar? No, Tony. He hadn't been briefed. He just got into the position, just moving in his office that day. He hadn't been briefed. There was a dinner 2 weeks later at Canberra in Parliament House. He knew more about diabetes at that dinner than I knew in my whole lifetime.
Really?
He realised I caught him out. Well, he's certainly got a huge understanding now of diabetes, particularly type 1. So anyhow, the federal government coughed up $32 million to implement this Islet program. It's now in clinic. It's now in the hospital where it can happen now to people with got brittle diabetes. Okay. It's not open to everyone. We need donors to be able to do this. When you needed about 3 pancreases to do it at that time, say 15 years ago, now 1 pancreas can probably do 3 patients. It's the advances are incredible. So we probably have about 40 in this country now, 40 patients who have had the transplant, the islet cell ITP it's called, who are now insulin independent. And I know one in particular. She wrote me a note the other day, and this is what really touches my heart when I know I've done something really good in my life, and I can be very happy about it. She said, Sue, it's my 10th anniversary since I had my islet transplant, and I'm still insulin independent. Do you realise what it's meant to me? I'm now back teaching. I can now look after my grandchildren. I can do all the things I did before I had diabetes when I was a child. Oh. That's just one person. We've got about 40 people now around this country who have now been successful with that program. Now, I'm not saying it's the answer to everything, and I'm not saying it's the cure. How do you define a cure? I don't know. But it gives a resolution. And it gives them hope.
Yeah.
that something is actually happening. And then you got stem cell research going on, which is
That's an interesting one.
That is gaining momentum. That's one thing that I'm looking towards.
Because so the reason why I'm fascinated by this is I've always been interested by martial arts.
Yes.
And in martial arts, stem cell treatment is huge, particularly for shoulder injuries.
Okay.
And so I know of a few well-known people in that space who have had the stem cell treatment. They typically go from America to, I think it's Panama. Panama is one of the only places in Central America it's affordable to get it done, basically. And the use cases are fascinating. We're talking about people who, my dad's actually had this done, complete damage of the rotator cuff, where they've had to have that operation where they get the pin put in and everything.
Angelo had that. He fell off his motorbike.
Did he? Yeah. It's a terrible injury, really.
It's terrible. It's painful too.
My dad he's in a sling right now, and he has to sleep upright for a week.
Ooh.
Yeah. But apparently now the stem cell operation repairs those ligaments. And it's amazing. And it was actually, I only found about it because there was a podcast with that famous Australian/Kiwi actor, well known for that rant, Mel Gibson.
Oh, yes.
Mel Gibson's father has had it for something. And so he's out there talking about stem cell therapy. He went on this podcast and the host had to hold off asking him all the questions about the bad things that he's done and the movies he's done to just talk about stem cell treatment.
Well, I think it's really moving along. But the other thing is too, autoimmune diseases, all the research is going into autoimmune disease, whether it be cancer or whatever. I remember when my daughter was having trouble with her eyes and she was going blind in one of her eyes, and they gave her a particular drug, an injection into her eye, which was to stop the proliferation of blood vessels in her eye, but they used it for cancer.
Really?
It was a cancer drug that stopped her from going blind. This is going back a number of years now. Who would have thought that could be used to stop the proliferation of blood vessels behind the eye as a result of retinopathy? And it was a cancer drug.
Yeah.
So all the research going into the autoimmune diseases, who knows? Yeah. We might find something there that will translate into diabetes.
And I'm particularly interested because, see, look, when I think about my brother, he's actually not too bad. He's not that bad. If you think about it, he's 26. He's had no real secondary issues. Based on what you're saying, your daughter seems to have had quite a lot. Usually
the first 20 years is okay.
Okay.
And if something is going to go wrong, it usually is the kidneys and then the eyes. But Danielle, I think the spirit was strong, but the flesh was weak.
Okay.
And I don't think Danielle was ever really accepting of the disease. I think she thought everything she did, if she worked hard enough, it'd go away. Well, It didn't go away. So, but it's not all gloom and doom. Some people live a very long and happy and healthy life.
Okay.
There's some of them that don't.
Yeah.
They're unfortunate. That's just how it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that there must be something genetic there where it affects some people more than most.
I think so. I mean, you can be absolutely perfectly controlled and still have all these complications.
Yeah.
But they usually don't hit for about 20 years.
Do they?
Yes,
Okay.
It takes 20 years. Children get it earlier, the complications, as opposed to type 2 because they haven't had the diabetes that long. And, but the complications are exactly the same.
Yeah, I'm going to include a link for everyone to sort of an explainer on type 1 diabetes. It's actually it's you learn about things that you've never heard about before, like the islets thing. I'd never know that they existed until
ITP program.
But that particular, what it actually affects, as far as I'm aware, type 1 diabetes is where something gets into a certain area of the pancreas and kills
the cells.
All the cells in this area. It's so specific.
But it can be bubbling away for 10 years before it's an acute onset.
Yeah.
It's not something, it's just all of a sudden, bang, you've got it.
Yeah.
But it's been bubbling away for years.
And also, there's a correlation between you having this specific gene and potentially getting it. So my brother Hayden's got it. Me and my sister both have the gene because we get the gene test every year.
You've done the test, have you?
I have,
yeah.
I was just intrigued to see. Yeah. And as far as I'm aware, by my age now, it's unlikely that I'll get it.
Well, we're getting close to a vaccine. It's called a rotavirus, which a lot of children get in their gut, in their stomach. And I think they're getting really close to developing a vaccine to prevent diabetes. Now, that's something I've been dreaming of for 30 years.
Okay.
And in fact, it's going on at the Walter and Eliza. And that's something I'm really excited about, a vaccine.
That's very,
Can you
very
imagine?
I know. So you would get the vaccine at a young age and it would basically prevent...
If you're predisposed, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know who decides who gets what, but I'm not a doctor of medicine, that's for sure. But the vaccine would be incredible.
Imagine if that was the cure.
Well, if we get a vaccine, that is a cure.
It is.
I talked to you before about saying, how do you define a cure?
It is. It's basically a cure.
If we can have a vaccine.
And then so... Really, the problem needs to be rooted from that point. If you have that cure, then you need to root down on the problem for the people who currently have it, and maybe it's that transplant.
Absolutely.
Or stem cell.
Well, again, it's an expensive procedure, but it's happening. We need donors, that will prepared to do that. So there's a lot of potential out there.
You've got me excited now learning about this stuff.
Yeah.
I went to look and it's hard to know unless you're really at the forefront.
Well, it's happening. I was chair of St Vincent's for 14 years, St Vincent's Institute for Medical Research, their foundation. So I really knew exactly what was going on there. And the head of the institute there, Professor Tom Kay, guess what he does? Type 1 diabetes.
Really?
He's the expert.
Uh-huh.
There's experts all around Australia, but he's the one that does the Islet, involved with the Islet program. In fact, the lab where they separate the islets is named after me.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I was so proud of that because I drove that.
Uh-huh.
Because I think they all thought I was a bit of a nutcase, but anyhow.
Well, we might have to get him in to talk about it.
Oh, Tom Kay's fantastic. Professor Tom Kay.
Professor Tom Kay.
He's at St Vincent's Institute.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about the Bulldogs, and I can see that there's a lot of times where you've spoken about that turnaround. We've spoke about the success of the Bulldogs and eventually the grand final in both teams, which is quite remarkable. I found it funny that you named the biography The Footy Lady when
I didn't name it.
You didn't name it that?
People kept calling me, oh, there's the Footy Lady.
I know, but that's what I mean. Like, it was used initially as a bit of a jibe back in the day.
Yes.
And now it's the name of your biography, which I found
exactly.
hilarious.
And I never, the people called me that. Little kids had come up to me and say, oh, you're the Footy Lady. You're the lady that lets me now play. I said, I don't let you play football. You play football. Oh, but you're the Footy Lady. So it's stuck. I never set out to have a name like that.
It's a good nickname. It's there in Wikipedia.
Yeah.
It's enshrined in the Holy Grail that is
Oh,
Wikipedia.
is it? Okay,
So,
I haven't checked.
the AFLW, you were a major proponent of it. I think it was quite funny reading some of these interviews in the early years. I think Moana Hope spoke about the fact that she just assumed you owned the league when really you were donating money to keep it afloat.
These pearls.
Yeah, which just sort of showed there was an audience for it, there was a talent base, it just needed the pathway. And I was reading through and I saw the fact that you'd had these conversations with Gillen and he said, she's a very stern woman. She always put her voice, she's forward, but she's not aggressive about it, which I found quite funny.
And he also said, I'm scared of you. I don't think so.
How early do you think the conversations with the AFL started for this becoming its own thing?
Well, there was already the local footy teams, the Victorian Women's Football League, and that's how... I've been watching the progression over the years because I wanted to see something happen and I didn't know how I could make it happen because I'd been dreaming about this since I was about 15 because I thought it was so unfair and I thought this is not right and I couldn't do anything about it at the time at 15, but I thought one day I'll make a difference. I'm a bit of a dreamer.
Okay.
I am a dreamer, actually. I'm a bit of a visionary too. And I thought, I went to a luncheon, the Victorian Women's Football League. This is going back many, many years ago. And I love people. I like talking to people and I wanted to find out what they were doing. And they asked me to speak about what I do. And they told me that they were in big, big trouble financially. They were ready to close women's football, just fold. And I thought, here's my opportunity. I'm one of these impulse people. I thought, this is right here and now I can do something. So they were ready to fold. And I thought, I'll write it a cheque It'll help them to get a full-time member of staff, get things moving, try and get back on track, get some sponsorship, get things happening, because these women were passionate. They were some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. Humble, kind, caring, everything that I hoped I'd been in my life. Well, that started things off. The whole room burst into tears. I've never done that before. It made people cry like that. They were so excited. Oh, God, 20 years ago.
Okay, wow.
So things had been going on in the background with women playing footy, but at that very local level. And there wasn't the huge interest in playing footy then, because they knew there was no career path, there was no pathway. Then I continued to fund them, and then we got to the stage of an exhibition match.
Okay.
And I went to my board when I was on the board and said I wasn't getting any funding from them because they were worried about the men and the resources for the men. And let's face it, the Bulldogs were not a rich club. We don't have a lot of extra cash. We're mainly machine at the Bulldogs. So we got talking with Melbourne. I did. I said, well, if the Bulldogs can't do it, I'll do it myself under the name of the Western Bulldogs. So I started funding. I did 3 years in a row funding the exhibition game of the Bulldogs. And then, of course, Melbourne got a wonderful sponsor support. I think it was a chemical company. They did the same. And that's how it all started. I funded the exhibition team for 3 years. And, of course, they funded theirs. And, of course, they came, they saw, and, yes, we did conquer.
And when did you know, when was the moment you realised that it was potentially going to be, I'm just trying to think of these backroom conversations of pushing the likes of Gillen.
I knew I had to go to the top and speak to the person at the top. That's the only way I operate. So I thought, he'll never see me. He'll probably think I'm some raving lunatic, but anyhow, I say that with all humility. And just before Christmas, I got an appointment with Gil.
Okay.
And I went into him and I thought, I've got to have some sort of plan. I walked in and I said, because he knew about me through the Western Bulldogs, I wasn't an unknown entity.
Yeah.
And I said, Gil, I want to have a breakfast. I want to launch women's football. I want to talk about women's football. I want to get the interest. And I thought, he's going to show me out of the office. Because I did see the previous CEO and he was not interested in me, that I was a nutcase. I thought, okay, that's fine. He truly wasn't interested. Maybe he was and didn't tell me, but he didn't make it clear to me that he was interested. So I thought, well, rightio, I'll go and see Gil, and I did. And I saw him at breakfast. He said, when is it? I said, March, I think it was. I'll be there. Put in the diary, he said to his EA, what else do you need? I've never done a deal like this in my life before where, what else do you need? I need marketing, I need blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'll get my team to help you. I thought, I can't believe this. I walked out of that office after shaking his hand and I thought, I hope this is not all talk. I hope this is the real deal. I walked out and it was 3 days before Christmas. All my Christmases came at once. He kept to his word. He kept to everything he said he'd do. He came and he said he was scared of me. Oh, yeah, as if he's scared of me. He spoke beautifully. He encouraged women to play football. As I said, love him or hate him, just like Tony. He was the catalyst for women playing football. Mm-hmm. He believed it. He's a smart businessman. He knew the bottom line, what that meant to the AFL. He's not a fool. 50% of people, women, go to the footy. But he knew there was a lot of pent-up frustration. He knew all that behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I didn't have to tell him really this. I think I was the one that went in there and said, put it on the line. I want to do this.
Yeah.
So please work with me. Well,
he just needed the catalyst.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's saying that I was looking at creating a business with my uncle years ago, and it was a product around AFL, soccer, etc. And we were looking at the numbers of participation at professional levels and junior levels. And the big thing, I know that they at AFL House they must be aware of what was happening in soccer, because and you can see that in the Davey girl, Brianna Davey.
Yeah, from St Kilda
Sharks. Because I know the
Sharks.
Davey sisters.
Yeah, she's a lovely person.
Now, she previously played soccer, right? Because your pathway was soccer or basketball or netball, and that was it. You couldn't go, you got to 15 and what do you do? And so they must have worked it out years ago. They just sort of had to work out how
That's
it eventually
why they brought
evolved.
it forward, because they knew they're going to get caught out.
Yeah.
I said, he's smart. He's a smart man, Gil. He knew what was going on. We had to get in there before, the others got stronger. And look, I don't really mind what sport a woman plays, so long as they play something.
Yeah.
and keep fit and healthy. Although I just happen to love AFL football.
Well, you played it.
I
so
played
you
it, but I
wanted-
played other sports too. I played squash, basketball, tennis. I played a lot of sport, but I just happened to like AFL.
Yeah, it's and so how long after that luncheon that Gillen was at?
Didn't take long. It was off and running, up and
Really?
running. Yep.
Wow.
And then it all just started happening behind closed doors. But perhaps I was the catalyst. There were some other wonderful people too doing things behind the scenes, but I guess I was in a position that they weren't in to be able to fund and get things happening. But Australia's been pretty good to me. They've been pretty successful. They've been good to me, Australia. And it was my opportunity to do what I've been dreaming on for years.
Yeah. It's very good to see it now. I mean, I'm excited. St Kilda has got a women's team
You've
next
got
year.
Peter Searle as your coach.
I know.
Saw
Brilliant
her on
coach.
Sunday. She used to be at the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
She's excellent.
Well, she didn't she coach Port Melbourne to a premiership
Yes,
with Gary Ayres?
that's right.
So, and then she coached, I think it was the St Kilda Sharks to a premiership. in the
I'm their
women's.
patron and I'm their sponsor.
Uh-huh.
I was there 2 weeks ago. We won the premiership.
Yeah, they're a very good team. Like
And they're a very good
I mean,
club
they played
too.
in the grand final
Yeah.
against Collingwood, didn't
But yes. Just recently, that was...
they? Oh no, it was a semi-final.
Yeah.
Prelim. Sorry, they lost the prelim,
Yes,
and
they
then
did.
it was Doggies. Was it Doggies Collingwood in the final?
Yes, I was there last Sunday.
Yeah, and Collingwood won it.
I didn't care who won, to be
Yeah.
honest.
It's a good thing. by the
Women
way.
won.
Yeah.
I love my dogs, but I don't care. It's all about the women.
Well, to be honest, I do have a bias to St Kilda, so I hope they can go out next year
It'll
and
be
they
a
can
good
win.
team.
Yeah.
St Kilda will have a very good team, and Peter is one of the best.
Yeah.
She'll be the only female coach, but she's played the game for years herself. A fearless footballer, a good mum, just a terrific person. I love Peter.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see that play out, I guess. Before we get into some rapid fire questions, I've got to ask, when it comes to recognition, I mean, there's so many titles, awards. I think I was saying in the kitchen earlier that the cup at one point was named after you.
Yeah.
What have we got here? We've got Victorian of the Year, Melbourne of the Year. Obviously, you're a member, officer and companion of the Order of Australia.
Arguably one of the very few women who's got all three.
I know. And I was looking at that on the actual the honour roll. There's not that many that have all three.
No, I was told by a minister, one of the very few women. So
Yeah.
it's pretty good for women.
It's actually there on the Wikipedia
Is it
page. That
really?
they put them in brackets of people who have certain
okay.
levels and so forth, and then people who've
I
got
haven't
three.
looked that up. but
There's actually
yeah.
not that many that
Really?
have all three.
Okay. Mhm.
I guess I'm curious, how do you want to be remembered? What do you want your legacy to be?
I've made a difference.
Yeah.
A difference in the things that were so important to me. Medical research, I know I've made a difference, and I know I haven't wasted my life. As I get to the end of my life, I know that I've made a huge difference. I really have, in the way of medical research. A dream of mine was, I had three wishes actually. The Bulldogs to win a premiership,
Yeah.
the girls to get a league of their own, which is something I always wanted. They've got their league of their own, and I'll keep working on that so long as I've got breath in me. But the third one, I haven't got it yet, and I'm hoping I'll be able to find that before I die, and that's a cure for diabetes.
Yeah.
Because it's something I've been working on for 40 years. So I hope I can be remembered for all three, and I've been able to accomplish all three. But if I don't, I know I've made a difference in the world that I live in, and I've given back, and I'm very satisfied with what I've done.
Well, I think on the point of diabetes, it could be that maybe you're the giant that people's, like they stand on your shoulders later on when they
I hope
find
so.
that cure.
I mean, I just want more and more students to be interested in diabetes research and come up with the cures and offer the hope to the patients who are diagnosed with this insidious disease. It just never goes away. And also, the other thing that I really enjoy doing is helping women in research, because 60% of our researchers are women. They get a pretty raw deal. They don't get the support, but they're getting it now. That's something I've been able to do as well, particularly at St Vincent's Institute. Women can now go off and have families and have research assistants come in. I've funded and raised a lot of money there to help those young women to have their families. They're just entitled to have a family, as the bloke is. So that's something else I've enjoyed doing along the way. So I'm always looking for challenges, but I'm also looking to sincerely make a difference in their lives.
Well, I do think that those three things, you will definitely stand out in those areas. I think the recognition awards are obvious, but I'm sure it's when you get to meet those people who come up to you and say, "Oh, you're the footy lady."
Yeah,
that's when it matters the most.
You've got no idea what that means to me.
Yeah.
I get notes from little kids, and they write me notes. And whenever I'm asked to go and speak at a school, I can never say no.
Yeah.
I mean, I do a lot of that, but kids I love. They've got stars in their eyes. And,
Yeah.
and then when I hear they've got diabetes, and they come up to me and tell you, oh, that really touches me.
Yeah.
I know what life's ahead of them.
It's very hard. Look, these rapid fire questions,
Sure.
short and sharp. What's your morning routine look like?
Get up at 5 o'clock, 5:30. I'm already working by 7 in my office. So that's what I do first thing in the morning. I get up about 5:30. But that goes back to the good old days of the building industry. I can't sleep in because I had to be up early. I'd get caught in my pyjamas if I didn't, because the blokes would come there and want planes and whatever, and I had to be dressed. So it goes back to the good old days. So I'm up at 5:30.
What about at your evening? How do you sort of decompress at night?
Well, I do try to go for a walk. I do most nights go for a walk.
Okay.
That's very important to me, that I just chill out. Most times my husband comes with me, which is really good, but if he doesn't, I still do it. I actually have a walking machine if I can't get out, because I watch the news while I'm on the walking machine.
Okay.
So I get a half an hour non-stop of watching ABC News.
ABC's your go-to?
Well, there's no ads. And I don't have to read a book while I'm on the walking machine, so I can watch the news and I get a complete news for 30. I watch the other stations too, but that's what I like to...
It's the ads are killer though.
Oh, God. Yeah. Anyhow, they've got to make money somehow.
That's
so
a good point.
I do that.
Okay, well, what's in the fridge at home?
All very healthy food.
Okay.
When I say in the fridge right now,
Yeah.
I've got various types of cheese, yogurt. I have fish. I don't like chicken very much. I've gone off chicken.
Yeah.
But I have healthy food in my fridge. I mean, I'm half the size what I used to be. I've been a very sick person. I've been morbidly obese, and health is wealth for me, and I need to stay that way as long as I can to do the things that I love doing.
Yeah, well, that was one thing that Lauren commented on. It's amazing. I think you lost 56 kilos or something?
58.
58.
Don't forget the other 2 kilos.
What's your fish of choice?
I think I like whiting, actually.
Do you?
I like a grilled, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Salmon's my go-to.
I don't mind salmon. No, I don't mind salmon. It's quite good too, so long as it's cooked properly and it's not raw.
Do you know, it's funny you mention about health as wealth. I basically had anxiety-related issues because of my food issues, IBS and whatnot. And it got me to a point where I was only eating a certain things, and actually really affected my health. And I found that eating more and more like your ancestors in a healthy way is very important. I think that there's definitely a correlation there with maybe in our families, if we've got that sort of Anglo-Saxon plus Mediterranean background, that a lot of the Western diet today doesn't really suit that. Now I primarily just eat fish and veggies and stuff
fish.
like that.
I really do.
Everything has turned around.
Well, I thought I had energy when I was obese.
Yeah.
Now you can't stop me.
Yeah.
Husband calls me the Fruity Bunny.
That's a good one. I like that. All right. Best purchase under $200.
I think when I was my first job and I bought a string of pearls, and I've been in love with pearls all my life, and I think as a material thing for myself was something that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I've still got them.
Do you really?
I still have them.
Wow.
Albeit my pearls have got a little bit bigger over the years and little bit more better. Have improved in the quality. I've still got those pearls. And they remind me of that.
What do you so like about the pearls?
They're just beautiful.
Yeah.
I just think they're simple and beautiful jewellery. I don't like anything large or gaudy or colourful.
Shiny.
I'm just pretty conservative.
Yeah. Pearls are quite an amazing thing when you think about it, the way that they're collected as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that was my biggest and one of my best purchases.
Now, if people want to connect with you on the internet, I notice you're active on Twitter. Mm-hmm. You like your retweets and whatnot. Some funny little clips that you've retweeted there. where's the best way that people can learn about what you're up to and doing on a weekly and monthly basis?
Well, you can follow me on my Facebook. I personally don't have one, but
Okay.
my medical research foundation does. This is an Alberti Medical Research Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
You find me on Facebook. It tells you what I'm doing, whether it be the area of sport or in medicine or medical research, it's all there. So I try to keep people up to speed because I'm very active in that foundation.
Okay. And we'll make sure we link all of that, link to Twitter and whatnot as well. But
Thank you.
Sue, thank you so much for coming in.
It's a pleasure.
Thank
you
you.
for having me.
Cheers. Thank you for making it to the end. Before you run off, subscribe if you enjoyed this episode, or do leave us a rating. For Instagram, go follow us on @uncommon_podcast. For YouTube, search Uncommon Podcast, and don't forget to subscribe if you're watching this video. Also give us a like or leave a comment on what you thought about the episode. But until next time, thanks so much for listening.